bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oh, yeah. Well. Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. Today's Wednesday, April 20th. You know what that means. Happy 420. 110 days into the new year, 254 days left. We are live from a bunker right here in downtown Burbank, California. I'd like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States, hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. It's Fade to Black. For KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the Planet, I'm your oh-so-humble host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? It is 420. So I tweet out right before the show. You know, everybody's posting their 420 weed memes. I get it. So I ask. I said, hey, you know, since we're all friends here, it's family, who's going to spark up during the show tonight? Right? It's 420. And I think we got two responses. You guys are all chicken. But I'm not going to tell. What, the 420 police are going to kick down your front door because you tweeted and, you know, you be honest. Be honest. I want to know. I love you guys. Happy 420. Tonight we have a very special guest with us, David Jacobs here, PhD. And we're going to be discussing the Alien Abduction experience all night tonight. We're going to go back to day one, and we're going to go through today and his new book. There is nobody on the planet that knows more and studies more and researches more about the abduction experience than David Jacobs, PhD. And we are going to go through it tonight. The call-in number is 323-825-5045. If you can dial a phone and hit the bong at the same time on 420, 323-825-5045. Okay. All right. Bob says he would if he had it. I'm sure, Bob, if you post your address, there's a local fader knot. Yeah, that'll come by and hook you up. All right. Tomorrow night is Fader Night. It's open lines all night long. We're going to have John Rappaport here with No More Fake Newsroom. And, you know, what's really great about having John here, especially the last 3 weeks, is it's really changed the dynamics of open lines. And I just can't wait to see what he's got for us tomorrow night. He really makes you think. Follow us on Twitter right now at JChurchRadio. Simple enough. Hashtag F2B. I don't know what all of, and that's the sandbox. I don't know what all of this confusion is about TweetDeck. I don't understand what the issues are. It's not supported. It is. It isn't. Go to twitter.com, because it's running all normally in Chrome for me. I thought it was like going to stop working. And I thought that we were going to have to go to the web-based version of it, which I used to use. I like the app. So there you go. Or does it just mean it's not going to be updated? It's still going to run. I have no idea. All right. Unfortunately, I had to choose gainful employment over being able to smoke weed. Yeah, it's kind of come down to that, hasn't it? I'm with you there. More on that in just a bit. All right, let's go. Let's get this show cracking. And check out all of our sponsors. How do you support the show? It's very simple. We are now 3 years deep into the show, 4 days a week, 3 hours a night, live, with the best interviews, best guests, best show, period, that is out there. That's it, and it happens right here. The show is free. You can listen to it free. It's archived for free. You can go to YouTube. We update it every day. You can listen to the shows there for free. That's what we do. The show is free. So how can we possibly do that? How can we employ all of these people and pull this off? We do it the American way, through advertising. And that's what you do. You support the show by just supporting our sponsors. Life Change Tea. Okay? That's one. Studio Dome, 2. Any of the advertisers that you listen throughout the show, visit their websites. That's what you do. National tax experts, that's what you do. And this show will continue to do what it does. It's a big effort that we do. It's a huge effort. And the only way to keep it going, oh, yeah, and of course, buy some T-shirts. Yeah. And, go get the podcast for $2 a month. And it's, people ask me all the time, how do you possibly do this every single day? I mean, how is it possible to do this? Well, we've just got a nice little machine built that allows us to do this. And it's all little things that add up at the end of the month, and we're able to keep the lights on. Okay? No stress. We don't beg for donations. We don't. Just support our sponsors. That's all you have to do. Life Change Tea, one of the very best companies and products out there, owned by one of the coolest guys, Ronnie McMullen. Go to getthetea.com. It's amazing products. So all you're doing is supporting the show by helping yourself. It's that simple. All right? And use the promo code Jimmy. Go to the sales page. Pick up a special. Use the promo code Jimmy. Get free shipping. Get a great deal. Help yourself. You'll feel great. It's simple. You're going to do it anyway. You're going to go and get supplements from somewhere, right? Get it from getthetea.com. And then the Studio Dome company, big supporter of everything that we do here. And their products are exactly what this audience needs, which are Bluetooth speakers. That's what you've got to have it, right? And you're going to go and buy Bluetooth speakers. So you might as well go buy the best. You might as well go buy the latest technology. Go to Studio Dome. And the deal and the relationship that we have with them for you is the best anywhere on planet Earth. You get 2 speakers, hard shell case, $129, true wireless stereo, the latest technology for $129. Use the promo code JCRTWS. You get a hard shell case, full fidelity stereo system. Take it to the beach, take it to the back patio, take it when you golf, take it everywhere. And you got your Van Halen with you. That's what I say. Well, it could be Van Halen or it could be Cowboys from Hell, but that's a whole nother thing. We will be next week up in San Francisco at the New Living Expo, April 29th through May 1st in San Mateo, California. Our full summer schedule is up at jimmychurchradio.com. All of the links for all of the events from now through UFOs Within Reach in August up in Big Bear. Everything is there. All the hotel information, ticket information, discounts for each event, Contact in the Desert, Roswell Festival. It's all there. All right, next week we will be at the New Living Expo. And I'll tell you something. I'm going to leak something to you right now without getting in too much trouble. Right before the New Living Expo, we'll be taping our new TV show, Episode 1. Yeah. Now, what is it? Can't tell you. But, yeah, what a week we're going to have next week. Let's get this show cracking. Why? Because today, George Takei is 79 years old. Sulu, 79. Drummer Mike Portnoy today is 49. About a year ago, a friend of mine and I were on Facebook together hanging out. and having a chat. And he's a drummer, and his name's Scotty Slam. Everybody knows Scotty here in L.A. And Scotty I've known since we were kids, and we were sitting there having a little chat. And Mike Portnoy, who's an old buddy of his, jumps in. And, I mean, I know Mike, but I don't know Mike. But anyway, so we get into this chat that lasted for half a day. Hundreds and hundreds of posts. I wonder if it's still up there on Facebook somewhere. And Mike and Scotty talked drums. And there's nothing like two drummers that get together, because guitar players don't do this. Guitar players don't get together and talk strings and pedals. They keep all their stuff secret. They don't want anybody to know, right? They don't. Singers don't hang out with other singers. You just don't do it. But drummers, well, bass players do this a little bit. They hang out with other bass players. But drummers will sit and talk. Hey man, you remember the old clamps on the Tama Jazz Star set? You remember that? I still use them today, man. They're so hard to find to get that cymbal clamp, man, because it's got an extension that you can put a small tom on and a cowbell. It is so cool, dude. I remember those clamps, man. Those were the bomb clamps. You know, it's crazy. And I watched Portnoy and Slam talk this stuff for 3 hours. It was hilarious. And I would just chime in once in a while and act stupid. Happy birthday, Mike Portnoy. The strangest dude in the world today, Crispin Glover, is 52. And he is indeed the strangest guy in the world. Our dead guy's birthday today is the one and only Tito Puente. 1923 to 2000, died at the age of 77. He is often credited as the musical pope, El Rey. They call him the god, the king of the timbales, the king of Latin music, the king. During a career that spanned 6 decades, he recorded over 100 albums, 5 Grammy Awards, and was referred to by the New York Times as the most important Latin musician of the last half century. And of course, in 1963, he wrote Oye Como Va, one of the great rock anthems, right? Santana. Now, the fact that phrase, Oye Como Va, is the title of the song and somewhat sung separately from what comes next, which is Mi Ritmo, right? It makes it easy to interpret the song as meaning, hey, how's it going? Which is what I thought for so many years. But, however, the first sentence is actually Oye como va mi ritmo, which means listen to how my rhythm goes. Happy birthday, Tito Puente. End of story. Tonight, David Jacobs is with us. We're going to be talking about the alien abduction experience all night long. Call-in number is 323-825-5045. On this day in history, Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris killed 13 people at Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado. That's all I'm going to say. It's as disturbing of a day as, but I don't think we should ever forget. Fate or fact, aerogel is the lightest solid material in the world. Aerogel. It's a silicone-based solid where 99% of its volume is empty space. Kind of like my head. Today is 420, everybody. And yes, it has turned into a national holiday. And who would have thunk that we would ever be here talking so freely about this, right? Because back in the day, let's go back to say like 77, 78, when watching Cheech and Chong Up in Smoke was like breaking the rules. Remember that? You know, and it was just pot, right? But here we are. It's 420. And I can tell you that everybody in the Oval Office right now knows what 420 means. Who would have thought that we would be here today having fun with this and talking about it and really not worrying about it. Now, this story also broke today on 420, no less. Coincidence? You figure it out. Because Canada will take steps now to next year legalize marijuana, the marijuana. Health Minister Jane Philpott announced today. Yes, the Health Minister of Canada. Philpott offered several reasons. And, I mean, I'm just blown away. But to end the ban on pot in Canada, including the view that laws in Canada and abroad criminalizing marijuana use have been both overly harsh and ineffective. We know this. Now, for an American citizen that has been arrested in the United States for pot, and it's on your record, you can't cross the border into Canada. You will be stopped. Everybody knows my story about what Canadian Customs did to me in Victoria. That was the Nazi squad, right? Looked right at me with my long hair. Have you ever sold marijuana? What? What kind of question is that to ask on the at Customs? Everybody's sold pot. Everybody's bought a joint or sold a joint, dude. I went to a Peter Frampton concert in 1977. You can't say that. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, so, but now Canada today says they're going to a marijuana-free zone countrywide. That's it. Uruguay became the first country to fully legalize marijuana back in 2013. You would have thought that it was Amsterdam and Holland, right? And Northern Europe. But no, it's still illegal there. Uruguay was the first country to step up in 2013. Canada now is expected to be the first G7 nation to do so. Now, this is where, for me, it gets crazy. How do we get here today in 2016? The new prime minister up there, Justin Trudeau, and you can look at him and tell he's a pothead, by the way, has appointed former Toronto police chief Bill Blair to sort out new regulations for the distribution of marijuana post-legalization. Incredible. And then Trudeau admitted in 2013 to having smoked pot, he says, 5 or 6 times, and he inhaled in his life, including at a dinner party with friends since, and this is the key word, since being elected to Parliament. That's who's running Canada right now, and good for you guys. But how do we get here to this point? And this is what is crazy about this, my friends. Now, look, I was in the music business. Okay? All right? I lived through the 70s and the 80s. Through that craziness, being a musician and a producer in the music industry. So, therefore, my past is my past. Okay? All right. I've done it all. I've seen it all. So, understand that. And I miss it. Are we clear? Do you understand what I'm saying? Today, do I smoke the marijuana? No. I can't. There's reasons why I can't. I wouldn't be able to function. But do I miss the smell? Oh, walk down Venice Beach and you just man, it's like being at a Foghat concert in 1981. But anyway, do I do that stuff today? No, I can't. I miss it. Of course I do. But how did we get here today? I look around and I think about this. I'm 52. All right? Now, all of you out there right now that are the 25-year-old new generation pothead smoking the nuclear weed, right, that you buy at your local dispensary, made by some mad scientist somewhere with THC content that would, kill, most small dogs, right? Okay, I get that, and you know who you are. And before you think that you are the coolest thing ever, right? You and your pot-smoking self, and I respect that, I do. But take a look around, because you take a look at somebody that's 60 years old today, anybody, your teacher, the head of the police department, your doctor, your friends' parents, whoever, somebody 60 years old. That 60-year-old person was 20 years old in 1977 getting it on. And I'm talking about doing the freaky deaky. All right? They all did. I was there. And that's the truth. So that's how we got here today. That generation, and I remember 77, 78, 79, 74, 73, 1980, 81, what was going on in this country. And we grew up to be okay. All right? We aren't a nation of 350 million drug addicts. It didn't happen. Didn't work out that way. That's what the establishment wanted you to believe in 1977, 76, 75, 80. It certainly didn't happen. We all grew up, got responsible, went to college, got jobs, raised families, productive members of society, and right now we're in the Senate and Congress. And we always wondered if that was going to happen. Hey, look, man, our generation, sit around 16 years old, 1977, we're all going to grow up one day, and one of us is going to be in Congress, man, and we're going to change the rules. We're going to change the laws. It'll never happen. No, it has to. Those old folks got to die off, man. And here we are today, 420, and it's okay. It's all right. Our country is okay. It's really funny. So when you think that you are cool, 25-year-old, right? Xbox One playing Call of Duty, pothead, which is cool. Do your thing. But go look at your grandmother. Because that grandmother of yours in 1975 was tearing it up. And her friends were having bong hit contests at a rock concert in the parking lot. Okay? All right? And if she says she wasn't, she's lying. It's amazing. Happy 420, everybody. And you know that I speak the truth. And I don't say this in jest. There are things today that kind of freak me out. This whole drug testing thing messes with my mind because of the prevalence of marijuana usage in the United States. I don't know if anybody's ever, can you get arrested for a DWI for pot? I don't even know. Can they test for that roadside? I don't know. Is that impaired driving? I don't know. I wouldn't do it, but drug testing today with the amount of weed that is smoked. I mean, is there a checklist? I mean, is there a point where it's I mean, how can somebody, I would think that nobody would get hired, right? I mean, if they really did test everybody in the United States, I mean, what is the percentage of people that have smoked pot in the last month? Not every day, just the last month. I don't know. I don't know what that number is, but it's got to be over 50%, I would think, or higher. Oh, man. All right. Happy 420. Russia said, now, listen to this, everybody. Yeah, take that last hit off the pipe and listen to this, because this is going to mess with your head. But this is what's going on right now with the petrodollar globally. Russia said today it was moving to push oil production to historic highs. Not lows, highs. Just days after the global deal to freeze output levels collapsed. OPEC got together, Iran got in, and all they did was fight, right? So now Russia leaves and says, you know what? Screw you guys. Our economy's in the crapper, and we're just going to kick it up. Russia's the number one exporting country in the world right now for oil. It's not Saudi Arabia. More on that in a second. So Russia splits and goes, you know what? We're kicking it up. We're going to push oil production to historic highs. And then Saudi Arabia comes back yesterday with this response. Saudi Arabia says it will answer that. They will call that bet and jack up output by as much as 2 million barrels per day to over 12 million barrels. Right now they're doing 10 million. Because, and this is what Saudi Arabia said, their oil minister, out of his mouth, he said they want to now overtake Russia as the world's largest producer. So now these two are in a peeing contest about who can be number one. Saudi Arabia is upset because they lost it 3 years ago, right? Now, OPEC member Venezuela stepped up after Saudi Arabia said that yesterday and said now they are predicting oil prices are going to really crash and break through the floor in the next few weeks because of this oversupply and what's going on between Russia and Saudi Arabia. Then today, Russia shot back at Saudi Arabia, responding and saying it is able to raise production to 12 or even 13 million barrels per day from its current record levels of close to 11. And they will not lose their number one status. So much for curbing output so they could jack up the prices. They all started fighting. They all need the money. Their economies are shrinking. And the only way to do it, no matter what the price of oil is to crank it up and get as much as you can to market. And what does that mean for us? Happy days are here again. I'll let these two fight all day long. And as long as they are kicking up their output, everybody else in OPEC's going to go, look, if you're doing it, we're doing it too. That we already have too much oil. There's no place to put it anymore. And they don't care. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. When I come back after the break, David Jacobs, PhD. And it is going to be an abduction experience kind of evening. Everything is on the table with David. Nobody knows more about the abduction phenomenon than David Jacobs, PhD. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. This is Fade to Black. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Use the hashtag F2B for the sandbox. I'll be right back.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio. What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I got to tell you, it was a relief. National Tax Experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. Doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil 3-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
Poor water quality is a major health issue, and it's only getting worse. Municipalities can't keep up, standards have dropped, and pollutants are increasing. Where does it all end? It ends by keeping the pollutants outside of your home with HydroCare's advanced systems available at Wave Home Solutions. No less than the best purification materials and processes have been developed by HydroCare to provide you with healthy, clean water for drinking, cooking, and showering. HydroCare far surpasses the competition in removing chlorine, odors, iron, lead, chemicals, limescale, and much more. Don't settle for less when it comes to your water. We'll take care of the toughest water problems for you, whether it's from a city or well source. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, call 888-997-WAVE. That's 888-997-WAVE. Or go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Hi, this is Chase Kletzky with Fate Magazine Radio, and you're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station, where the Fade or Nots rock.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, David Jacobs, PhD, is with us. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Email is Jimmy@JimmyChurchRadio.com. Just make it good, and the producers will actually forward the email in here into the bunker, and I'll read it. But you got to make it good. You don't make it good, I don't see it. And if you make it really bad, you just go into the spam folder, and we'll never hear from you again. That's just the way it is. Those are the rules. Happy 420, everybody. David Jacobs, PhD, is a retired professor of history at Temple University in Philadelphia. He has also been a UFO researcher since 1966. In 1973, he completed his doctoral dissertation in the field of intellectual history at the University of Wisconsin-Madison on the controversy over unidentified flying objects in America. This was only the second PhD degree granted with a dissertation involving a UFO-related theme at that time. From 1977 to 2011, he taught the country's only regular curriculum university course on UFOs and abductions, UFOs and American society, and since the early 1980s, he has specialized in the UFO abduction phenomenon. He has investigated over 1,150 abductions with 150 individuals. He has published 5 books on UFOs and abductions: The UFO Controversy in America, Secret Life, First-Hand Accounts of UFO Abductions, The Threat, UFOs and Abductions, Challenging the Borders of Knowledge, and his latest work, of course, is Walking Among Us. His website is ufoabduction.com. I'd like to welcome to Fade to Black, David Jacobs. David, I almost said welcome back to Fade to Black, but this is your first time on the show. We had you on over at Coast to Coast a couple of weeks ago, and I had a little brain freeze for a second. This is your first time on Fade to Black, man. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. It is my first time indeed.
Yeah, it's just weird. We talk a lot. and everything else. And I would almost said welcome back, and it's not. It's your first time. Welcome. All right. Now, David, you get the official Fade to Black first-time guest disclaimer, which I almost didn't do. And the next time you're on the show, you won't get it. But and that disclaimer is this is just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation between friends, and where we start, where we end, but we'll end as friends. And there you go. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Now, I kind of want to do this tonight with you, David, because probably, and I said this leading up to your introduction, I don't know of anybody right now on planet Earth that has more knowledge in the abduction phenomena and experience than you. And it's not that you're the last man standing. You have done the most research, aside from, of course, Mac and Hopkins. But putting them aside, you are the guy. You're the one that we turn to for this knowledge. And I kind of want to go back in history, and I want to pick your brain, and I want to learn something tonight. And so let's do that. Are you cool with doing a little historical perspective?
Sure. I don't know how much you're going to learn, but I'll fake it.
No, I'm going to fake it. Okay? That's the way it works. You have the PhD. I don't have it. So I fake it, and we start there. But going back to 1966, and we can kind of start there where your research started. But up until 1966, there was only a handful of verified abduction cases that were studied and researched and written about in books and so forth. And was it those few incidents that had occurred, the black and white ones, literally, is that what spawned your interest into the abduction phenomena, or was it something that maybe happened in the 1950s?
Well, it did not. It didn't really prompt my interest that much. I mean, I read. Of course, I knew about the Antonio Villas Boas case when it was first published around 1966 in a mass kind of publishing book. But
and we're going to talk about that case too. So let's not let that get away from us. That's a fascinating case.
Well, the only other case in 66 that we knew about was the Barney and Betty Hill case, which happened in 61.
Right.
And so those are the two cases. And I didn't know much about the illiterate Brazilian peasant, Antonio Villas Boas, who said that he was taken on board this UFO against his will, and all these sort of procedures were run on him, and then he was forced to have sex with this fairly good-looking woman, although it was disgusting, he said. And
he went back for seconds and thirds, though. That was the other.
Couldn't help himself. He couldn't help himself.
Right.
It wasn't until the 1980s that we learned that he was not an illiterate Brazilian peasant, that he was a law student essentially, and became an attorney, and had a career, and maintained the truthfulness of his story the entire time.
He died young, though, didn't he?
He did. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was obviously one of three things: a stroke, or heart disease, or
right,
or something along those lines.
We'll come back to that case. So there's Betty and Barney Hill, which we're going to talk about extensively too as well.
Okay.
And for me, Betty and Barney Hill and that book, Raymond Fowler, The Interrupted Journey, was a book that I had read early on, and it certainly opened my eyes up to the abduction phenomenon as well. Also, the Andreessen affair too, as well, with Betty Andreessen. But up into, when I say a handful of cases in 1966, it was just that, wasn't it?
It was just a few cases, exactly right, and just a few cases does not a phenomenon make. And so our sense of it was in those days, if you believed in this, that they were examining us it fit into the examination concept of the abductions, that they wanted to know what made us tick, and that's why they would grab somebody and look them over and return them to to where they were before and all that. We didn't know much about how to even interpret what people were saying. We didn't know anything about hypnosis with abductees. We didn't know anything like that. We were just taking these cases as real, depending on what they said. And Ray Fowler actually wrote the Andreasen case, and I read when the Andreasen case book came out. I looked at that, read that book, and she saw a giant phoenix rising from the ashes. I remember there was a big illustration of it in the book, and I thought to myself, "This cannot be real. This is going to come out of this is biblical stuff, or else it's prehistorical stuff, or whatever it is. It doesn't seem to be memories of being on board a UFO. It didn't sit right with me. Barney and Betty were legitimate, but still, you never know. And people are seeing UFOs, meanwhile, by the millions, literally.
Right.
And so you're looking for cases that are all similar. You're looking for patterns and everything, and those patterns weren't quite there yet. And so I really stayed away from abductions. I didn't deal with it. I've told the story many times, but I didn't get interested in the abduction phenomenon until I was introduced to Bud Hopkins,
right.
In 1982 by a mutual friend, Tracy Torme, and even then I did not want to go to his house. I had no interest in it at all. I knew it was just going to be a waste of my time. I had been at a conference with him the year before, and I walked out before he started talking so I could tell jokes in the hallway with my friend Marcello Truzzi, who was a professor of sociology at Eastern Michigan, and he knew every joke that was ever invented. And so that was my interest, not listening.
Isn't that funny? It's funny how life works, isn't it?
It's actually even weirder than that, in that when I finally was introduced to him and went over to his house with Tracy Torme, he was charming, he was wonderful, he was intelligent, he had fantastic art on the wall and on his walls. And we were standing there outside his front door on 16th Street and 8th Avenue, and he said, "What are you doing this summer?" And I said, "Well, we just had a baby. And so we used to go to we used to go to Bar Harbor, but it's too long a trip in the car with the baby, so we're just going to go to a little town in Cape Cod called Wellfleet." He said, "Wellfleet? I own a house in Wellfleet. I spent every summer in Wellfleet, and I have for years. When you come up there, look me up." So we did that, and that's what really sort of got me started in the whole phenomenon. That coincidence that of all places, this tiny little town in the Upper Cape, Lower Cape, or Middle Cape as they call it, he lived there during the summer, and that's where we were going. That was really. Why they invented the word coincidence.
Yeah, right. And how did you feel? This is kind of a personal question, but after giving him your mental brush off, right, and intentionally disconnecting from Bud, then you find when you meet him, and he's not only cool, but he's smart, he's articulate, he's focused, and he's legit, and he wants this subject to be taken, scientifically and very serious. Did you have a tinge of guilt?
No, not really.
Did you tell? Well, did you tell him you walked out of his?
No, I never told him that.
Okay, all right. I believe you.
I'm sure if I'd remembered to tell him that, he probably would have laughed. Maybe I did somewhere along the line. He became my closest friend.
Right.
Forever. Starting in when I met him in '82 and going all the way up until he died in 2011. But I remember coming back. I was director of the American Studies program at Temple University at the time, and I remember sitting in my office, and I called up Ellen Hynek. And I said, Alan, I just came back from Cape Cod, and then there's this guy named Bud Hopkins there, and he knew of Bud, of course. I think it was Alan Hynek's conference that we were at originally, but he told me, I said, I think he's got something there, Alan. I think he's onto something. This abduction thing is more, it's more substance to it than I thought. And he said, no, David, stay away from that. Don't, just keep with sightings. Don't go around, don't go with that abduction stuff. I said, I don't know, Alan. I really do think there's something to it. And he once again said, no. You just stay with sightings. That's safe. That's secure,
Right.
They'll go off into this crazy stuff of abductions. But I did not obey him, and I'm thankful for that, I guess.
How old were you in 1966?
I was 70 years old then.
How? I'm going to take a guess. I don't know. Were you 20, 21?
Oh no, I was much older. Let's see. I was born so long ago, as I often tell people, that nobody ever heard of the year I was born in.
Wow. Do you have an autographed Bible?
I was born in 1942.
Oh, that's not so bad.
52, 62.
I know.
So I was 24. No, I was 52, 62. Yeah, I was 24, I guess.
Okay, so you're 24 in 1966, and so you're old enough at that point to be in the middle of the contactee phenomenon from the 1950s that rolled through.
It had faded considerably, but there was a vestige left over.
Right.
By the 60s, most of the big timers had faded considerably, but I got actually interested in 1965, but it was in 1966 that I really glommed onto it. I really got really interested. And I remember in summer of 1966 there was going to be a conference on UFOs in Los Angeles, and I think I can't remember exactly where it was now. Maybe it was a Shrine Auditorium. I can't remember. It was an auditorium of some sort, and it was put on by a guy named Dr. Frank Stranges.
Oh yes, of course.
And I was thrilled to be able to go there. And I took my wife, and we had a couple of friends who didn't know anything about the subject. We grabbed them and took them along too. And we got there. We sat up in the balcony, and there was several talks that went on beforehand. I don't remember any of them, but I do remember that they were not enlightening, let's put it that way. And then came the big event. It was going to be an actual film of a UFO. And there weren't all that many films in 1966, especially close-up ones. And so the lights go down, the film comes up, and as I've told people, there it was in all its shining glory, spinning away in a forested area, very close to the camera. And if you squinted hard enough, you could avoid seeing the string it was hanging from. And I was so embarrassed because we take these friends there too. Oh, it was awful. And if I had an ounce of brains in my body, I would have just left the whole thing altogether. But I stuck with it, and we moved to Wisconsin that summer. And I continued to obsess on it, and by late '66, I was subscribing to the APRO Bulletin and the Flying Saucer Review, the best journal in the world, and NICAP, and the UFO Investigator, and all that sort of stuff. And I was investigating cases for APRO, the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, and I was going around Wisconsin in my area, questioning people and all that sort of stuff, and filing reports. And I kept doing that for a long time, actually, and until I finished my dissertation, and then I started going on. Actually, even when I was writing my dissertation, I started doing interviews on radio and television shows in 1972, if you can imagine that.
Did you ever do? Oh, I wanted to ask you this kind of directly. Is there at any point a consideration of any of the contactees, famous or otherwise, as abduction cases from the 1950s, or is that do you draw a line in the sand?
Yeah, none of those people who I look at now and who were the contactees of the time, I think were abductees. Most of the five major ones: George Adamski, Truman Bethune, Orfeo Angelucci, Howard Menger. Oh, and there was another guy whose name escapes me now.
George Van Tassel.
Oh, George. Well, no, not George Van Tassel. There was another one. Well, maybe it wasn't Van Tassel. It was it might have been him for all I know. But most of them were basically in it for the money. They all they knew each other. They all agreed that this contactee was telling the truth. They all upheld each other, even though most of them had their claims escalated drastically and dramatically. In other words, Howard Menger claimed that he took a ride in a flying saucer, and in those days, rides in flying saucers were sort of the routine that's what you had to have happen to you if you were an abductee. You had to have a ride in a flying saucer.
That's right.
As if that's a concept, which we know is not. It's purely popular culture. But they escalated their claims. Howard Menger went to the moon. He got off on the moon's surface. The air on the moon was the same as you and I breathe now here on Earth. He had dinner with the king of the moon. That was the only part he told that was true.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, and I know that you've watched all of those little black and white newsreels of interviewees that would say things like, yeah, I met a couple of people from Venus last night. Right. Just people off of the street, took a ride and I met them. They're really nice. They look just like us. And there were hundreds, if not thousands of pieces of footage like that. And now how do you think, what would the phenomenon be that was going on that allowed people to get sucked into the point where they have to turn around and just tell these stories to some journalist on the street with a camera and a microphone, that they invent these stories? Because truly they were invented.
Right. Well, the thing about there was another guy. Let me just give you another contactee and show you what the tension was. There's a guy named Truman Bethune. And Truman Bethune was out laying asphalt in the desert one night, and he slept in a sleeping bag. I can't remember the exact parts of it, but down came a flying saucer from outer space, and he walked over to it, and out came a guy who was one of the crew members, and the guy was dressed sort of like a flight attendant with a cap would be today.
Right.
And because he was just a member of the crew. And the skipper of the scow, as he called it, the scow, was actually a diminutive but beautiful woman. And she invited him on board and they gave him a ride somewhere, and then they let him go back to a sleeping bag or whatever it was. So he wrote this book about it. And he also included in the book a section of it in which he went down. He related the story how he got up from his own apartment house and he went down to the Greyhound bus station to get a cup of coffee, sit at the counter. And as he was sitting at the counter, he noticed that the diminutive young woman, the skipper, was sitting at the counter, at the end of the counter also. And he was about to hail her, and she put her finger to her lips and she said, "Shh, don't disclose who I am. Don't break my my anonymity, so to speak." And he told that story, as I remember, or a story like that, on The Tonight Show with Steve Allen.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, these people were making it into a mass popular audience, helped along by television, to the chagrin and the disgust of all the legitimate UFO researchers around. Donald Kehoe, for example, and others, Jim and Coral Lorenzen. It was awful for them. And most of the legitimate researchers in the 1950s spent all their time and all their energy combating the contactees, saying that George Adamski and Truman Bethlehem, Howard Menger, Raffaele Angelucci, and others were not the real item. They were making it up and all the rest of that stuff. And that really put a damper on when the Antonio Villas-Boas case came along, and then the Barney and Betty Hill came along. They weren't that much. Antonio Villas-Boas was in 1957 in the heyday of the contactees, and people just couldn't go there. It just the contactees had ruined it for people who are interested in this abduction phenomenon as it was just beginning.
And at the same time of all of this going on, there were some serious sightings that were going on around the country, and that were being photographed and researched. Of course, Blue Book comes along, and Hynek, and certainly Kehoe. You're there, APRO, NICAP, and these research organizations were really dealing with a phenomenon that they were trying to wrap their head around. And in the meantime, the serious tinfoil hat crowd, because they were literally wearing tinfoil hats, was there. And they were allowed to spread their story. Was it done so in a disinfo sort of way, allowed to ferment, to discredit the real research that was going on, and to make Kehoe out to be one of them and a tinfoil hat kind of guy?
I don't think so. Kehoe was had a background. He was a really solid citizen. He worked in the Department of, gosh, now I can't remember which. He was sort of a minor figure in one of the governmental departments, but when he was younger, he accompanied Charles Lindbergh, the greatest hero of the age by way far, prior to World War II. After he flew across the Atlantic, he then made a sort of trip across the United States to meet the folks and let them see his plane and all the rest of that stuff. And he was met by hundreds of thousands of people. I'm not overestimating this. I'm underestimating it. In other words, I can't remember, but I think it was from Minneapolis, 25,000 people signed a single congratulations telegram to him.
Right.
Before he even came to that city. And Kehoe went along with him on that flight, and then wrote a book called Flying with Lindbergh. That was a very well received book and all that. And so he was prominent, and he was a legitimate person. He wasn't just some guy who was interested in the subject. So when UFOs came along, he actually was at the first press conference that they ever had about it, and in 1950.
Well, let me jump in right there. I got to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Our guest tonight, David Jacobs, PhD. We're going through the abduction phenomenon and experience, day 1 to today, and his new book, Walking Among Us. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. More David Jacobs right after this short break. Stay right there.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
Hello, I'm Alien. You're listening to my main man, Church on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station.
Hey folks, Life Change Tea here, reminding you that colds and flus suck. Feeling lousy sucks, and allergies really can be annoying. What if you could change that? What if you could drink something that changed the sick and tired scenario? Well, you can change how you feel with a little help from Life Change Tea. Life Change Tea is a drink you make, you control, and you drink. There are 8 organic herbs that blend together and give you what you need to fight the flus and colds of this world. Less sickness is more relief. Life Change Tea can help with high blood pressure, constipation, high cholesterol, and much, much more just by drinking the tea. Read the numerous testimonies at getthetea.com. If you're tired of feeling lousy, order right now at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Or you can call us at 928-308-0408. That's 928-308-0408. If you've heard this commercial more than once and someone's trying to tell you something, it's time to get well. GetTheTea.com.
Imagine no longer being tied down to your computer, but having the freedom to take live talk radio with you anywhere you go. TalkStream Live introduces our first ever iPhone application. The talk shows you follow now follow you, and your iPhone is now the fastest and easiest way to stay connected to the best talk radio on the internet. Let TalkStream Live transform the way you listen to radio. Listen to live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mobile talk radio from TalkStream Live. Now available in the iTunes App Store.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to jimmychurchradio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. Yes. We're of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And I'm Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. And you're listening to Jimmy Church. The Revolution.
What's up, Fadernauts? Studio Dome loves Fade to Black and the F2B audience so much that they have put together the ultimate stereo Bluetooth system. They've done it just for you. Man, check this out. The Studio Dome SBB2 stereo system is here. It's featuring 2 Studio Boombox 2 SBB2 wireless Bluetooth speakers, packed in its own custom hardshell case. This Studio Dome system features the very latest in stereo Bluetooth technology. The 2 full-range boomboxes are in true wireless stereo. You've got to hear this. It's amazing. It's just $129, and use the promo code JCRTWS, and you'll also get free shipping. It's simple. Just go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on the Studio Dome banner. Go Beckley Teppy.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
Welcome back to Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, David Jacobs. He has written 5 books on UFOs and abductions, the UFO controversy in America, Secret Life, First-Hand Accounts of UFO Abductions, The Threat, UFOs and Abductions, Challenging the Borders of Knowledge, and his latest work, of course, is Walking Among Us. And David, right before the break, we were talking about Antonio Villas-Boas and, of course, Betty and Barney Hill. And those 2 abduction cases were about 4 years apart. Antonio's story didn't really break till much later. Betty and Barney Hill happened in 1961. And I want to go back to Antonio's case. We know now that he wasn't who he said he was. He said that he was an illiterate farmer in the middle of Brazil, in the middle of nowhere, and that's what added the legitimacy to his case. Was that, you know, how could a guy like this make up this story? He doesn't have the technical know-how, and that's what freaked out most people. We find out later that he was a young guy, bright, smart, good family,
studying to become a lawyer, eventually does become a lawyer. Did that hurt his story, or for you, how did it change it?
Well, I was shocked when I heard that he was an attorney and that he was not an illiterate Brazilian peasant. But I'm not exactly sure where the concept of illiterate Brazilian peasant came from, because his father obviously was a major landowner in the area. He was driving a tractor at the time, Antonio was, and there weren't any tractors. People couldn't afford tractors in the area that he was living in, and so he, there was. My guess is that people just sort of assumed he was an illiterate Brazilian peasant. So I was shocked when I heard that he wasn't. But I still, I wasn't interested in UFO abductions at the time, so it didn't mean a whole lot to me. But it was interesting. But the fact that he became an attorney was even more interesting, because now I don't know how you view attorneys, but most of them are not supposed to lie.
Right.
But so to be a college graduate and gone to law school, and then to become an attorney and have a career as an attorney was and still maintain the craziness of this story. Makes it much more legitimate than if he was just a guy who was saying it. It was just an average person. But Antonio Villas-Boas was not average. He was he had a special kind of life. So it made his story even stronger, I thought.
Well, and he was also very, I haven't read the story for a few years, but this is what my memory says to me, that he was covered in a gel. I remember that part of the story, which I thought was pretty crazy for 1957, that there were hieroglyphics and that he remembered what they were and wrote those down, and I remember seeing those. That he went on to say, he talked about her pubic hair, he talked about what she looked like, he talked about the sex, and all of this stuff in very graphic detail for that time period was a pretty crazy thing to come forward and speak about. And that's the part of the story that, for me, because it's always the attention is in the details, and not Adamski or anybody else was going into these areas that Villas-Boas did at that time.
Right, and the prudish UFO researchers of the day simply stayed away from that bizarre case in the first place. But the fact that he was supposed to have intercourse with this female meant that that they weren't going to touch it with a 1,000,000-foot pole, because sex did not come into the world of UFO research at the time. So it made it all the more. I mean, it wasn't published in a mainstream UFO magazine until 1966, as far as I remember, and it happened in '57. But the interesting thing about the Antonio Villas-Boas case is that it was discovered in 1957. That was only 10 years after the major wave of sightings that brought UFOs to public attention.
Right.
Now, that's not a whole long time, considering that there are millions of people who are abductees. But it is interesting that when we look back on it now from from decades later, we can see that the abduction phenomena was early on. Now, having said that, we can date the abduction phenomenon back to the possibly last quarter of the 19th century. When I was doing research at the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization for my dissertation many years ago, I read a letter written by somebody to Jim and Cora Lorenzen. And the letter was just a little note, and it said, "I thought you might like to know this. When I was 11 years old in the year 1917, my parents took me out to my grandparents' house, and I went out into the back area There was a farm kind of community. And he went out and he was playing or something, and he was fooling around in a stand of trees, and he looks over and he sees a large circular metallic object on the ground, very large, with 3 people standing outside of it, 3 small people staring at him. So he turned around and ran, and he said that the small people ran after him, and he ran faster than they did, and he went back to his grandparents' house, and that's it. That was the story, and he just thought that they would like to know. And I read that. I had no idea what I was reading. I was amazed. It happened in 1917. There was no embellishment. There was no inside story, nothing else, just that. And but now that I know about the abduction phenomenon, I know absolutely positively what happened, if I can even say that. When there's a UFO near somebody or on the ground, and there's somebody standing near them, they're there for a reason, and so is the person. And the person does not turn around and run, and then the little gray aliens or whatever run after him. That has never, ever, ever been reported, except on board a UFO when a person gets loose.
Right.
And that will happen sometimes, but not in an open field. That's just not going to happen. And but what happened was almost certainly this kid was abducted when he was 11 in 1917, and then he didn't remember anything that happened. He remembered the first few seconds of the event. He saw these beings. Then he remembered the second part of the event, which is he ran home. And he thought they were chasing him, but he didn't. But they almost certainly were not.
Was there any follow-up to that story at all?
No.
That's it. That's all you have is the letter?
Jim and Coral got the letter, I think, in the 1950s or 60s, when God knows when. But then again, Bud Hopkins did sessions with 2 people who were kids in the 1920s who were abductees, and I'm with one person who was a child in the 1920s, and I did sessions with 2 people who were kids in the 1930s.
Interesting. And what were the wow? That's going back so far. Were there similarities between the cases too, as well?
I have to remember now. One case was a kid who was very, very, very sick with scarlet fever, as I remember. I have to remember this now. And she was on a deathbed. There was a physician there. This is in 1938 or something like that, 37, whatever. There was a physician there trying to help her. I think it was scarlet fever, yeah. And her father was there in the room. The mother was in another room weeping. The physician was trying to help her. She had sunk into a very low state. Apparently, this was a death situation. And then she said that the doctor and her father suddenly became silent, and then sort of stared into nowhere. And these beings came into the room, grabbed her, took her out into a UFO. They worked on her. They brought her back, and everything was sort of the way it was before, except suddenly she was fine.
No scarlet fever.
No, and she wanted to get out of bed and play. And the doctor said to the father, "You're looking at a miracle here. I hope you know that. This is a miracle." And I can't remember the other one, but it was also similar to those lines. The child was in some way cured. I'll have to go back and look at my files, but I know that these 2 women had events in the 1930s. They had events in the 1940s, of course. And in other words, this phenomenon goes back probably to the 1920s, maybe even the 19-teens, and possibly the last quarter of the 19th century.
And when you look at modern cases and you go back and look at those cases, certainly you have connected the dots and the similarities through all of your cases and research over the years. And what are the similarities to those very old cases versus the modern cases that makes you pause?
Gray aliens, number one. Number two, lying on a table, having procedures done to you, of all the crazy things in the world, even Antonio Villas-Boas had procedures done to him, but he said that they made a little cut in his chin, and they took a cup, and they took whatever blood came out of his chin, and they put it in the cup. Then he said that they gave him a tour of the ship when he left. That did not happen. But there's no such thing as a tour, but he must have picked that up somewhere from the 1950s. But what happened was he almost certainly was led out through a hallway. He looked into different rooms as he was walking out, and he interpreted that later on as giving him a tour. That's essentially what my best guess is. But most of the stories are the same. In other words, these are not stories where they're told the secrets of the universe, where they're given an insight into who these beings are or anything like that, or why they're here, no whys or wheres or whys or anything like that. No discussions to speak of. There's these similarities that people wouldn't even think of.
Now, there's something else here for me. Men in an abduction experience, there's a lot of in a lot of cases there's some type of sex involved, some sperm donation of some kind and testing, and you don't. It's occasional with women, but is it not as prevalent, or women just don't talk about it, or are women not having sex with aliens?
No.
And it's a hard question to answer. I understand that, and it's difficult, right? But it's one that is there, and look, Barney Hill in 1961 said some pretty graphic things. Villas-Boas back in 57, well, in the 60s, said some pretty crazy things. But you weren't hearing such graphic detail from women abductees.
Well, with Barney and Betty Hill and with Antonio Villas-Boas, they both had two things. They had one thing in common. Let's just put it that way. With Antonio Villas-Boas, there was a reproductive aspect. He had to impregnate, so to speak, or whatever he was doing with this female. With Barney and Betty Hill, Barney had sperm taken from him that was extremely embarrassing to him. And when John Fuller wrote the book, Interrupted Journey, he had John Fuller take that part out. It was too embarrassing for him.
Yeah, he fought for that too, didn't he? He did not want that in the book.
No, absolutely. This is crazy and also embarrassing. Betty had a needle injected into her navel, and purportedly she asked what they were, and she said that they had told her that it was a pregnancy test. Now, I have very, 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 very serious doubts that conversation took place.
Between her and the
confabulation.
What do you mean by that? Between her and the alien, that conversation went down?
She said, "What are you doing?" And he didn't say anything. And then later on, she said, "Well, he told me that it was a pregnancy test."
Right, I remember that.
Yeah, and but there is no such thing as a pregnancy test. That is not a concept. And the needle in the navel procedure we know quite well. This we've seen hundreds of times. It's not unusual. We're not exactly sure of what it is, but most likely one of the best answers that I've heard is that the needle is actually angled in a little bit and it's going into the ovary and it's pulling out eggs that way. However, we're not exactly sure, but we know for an absolute certainty that it was not a pregnancy test. There's never been such a thing as a pregnancy test, and that is the first time that those words were ever uttered, never to be uttered again in the hundreds and hundreds of sessions that I've had with people. I've never heard it again, And you'd think it'd come up all the time because you're looking for patterns, and that pattern never developed. But people confabulate. People think. Here's the problem: all communication on board a UFO is telepathic. I shouldn't say all, I should say most. In telepathy, you're hearing the thoughts of another person. You're hearing the communications from another person. What's to prevent a person from hearing their own thoughts and thinking they're coming from somewhere else?
That's right. That's right.
And the answer is nothing prevents that. They do it all the time. It's called confabulation. And they think that it was told to them, and they're positive about it, et cetera, et cetera. And I've learned over the years to be very, very, very cautious with things like that. And so the key thing about Barney and Betty Hill, though, is the reproductive aspect. And this is constant all the way through the abduction phenomenon, if you ask the right questions in the right way, et cetera, et cetera. And so what we're looking at is something that is fairly focused, at least in this particular area.
With Betty and Barney Hill, there's a couple of things that stand out that are unique in their case. Number one, the first contact that they had when he pulls over the car, he's got the gun in the car, he gets out, walks down the hill to the field, right, and she's freaking out. They get back in the car. Other things happen, but basically that happens.
Yeah.
And then the next the contact that they have, the craft is sitting in the middle of the road, forces him to stop his car. They see the beings in the window, and then of course everything else happened. There's that part of the case which I find very, very interesting and intriguing, and it's the detail of both of those incidents of the initial contact that I find fascinating. And then the second part for me is that friggin' star map. And that part and the trade routes and how she described it, and of course she drew it out, and later on, the 3D map was made in the late 60s, that kind of corroborated her entire story too, which at that time we didn't have satellites that even knew what was going on the other side of the sun. So how could she therefore have had that knowledge in 1961? So that to me is an interesting part of the case that had never been discussed, not with Adamski, not with Van Tassel, and not with anybody else anywhere up until that time. And I don't know where, if it's fantasy or imagination, where that comes from. And that's what I find so interesting about the case.
Well, that's a good question to ask. Where does that come from? And I've mulled this over for a long, long time. And Betty was a down-to-earth, a wonderful person. And when people talk about their abduction experiences, people do not lie. However, they can get things wrong and they can confabulate, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the problem with the map. When you're dealing with exceptionally advanced civilizations with technology, you don't need no stinking map. And in fact, this is the first and only map that I've ever heard of. That's not a good sign. People will be seeing maps from time to time and reporting it. Or they be showing maps or whatever, but it's never happened again as far as I know. Now, maybe it has happened and I'm not aware of it. So that's one problem. Now, let's just say there was a map. The next problem with that is trade routes. And the answer is, huh?
Well, where would they? Yeah, but see, where does this idea come from? Is she talking about folklore and the Silk Road?
No, I'm talking about confabulation. In your own mind, you start thinking these things, and you think they're coming from the outside, from somebody talking to you. And but then there's a third part to this, and that's recreating the map. If Betty Hill got it just a little bit wrong, just a little bit, she could have been millions of miles away from the map that ultimately was drawn, and everybody started debating and all the rest of that stuff. And what is this? And it's Zeta Reticuli, and all that. To me, it was just asking too much of Betty. It was asking too much. That you just couldn't go. You can't do that.
Right. And I totally understand your view. And again, you're intelligent. I'm not. But the thing is, David, when I first not only, well, I saw the movie, but when I first read the book and I really started to pick this whole story apart, that was the one aspect to me where because I hadn't heard this from any other contactee or any other abduction experience, it was so singular and unique that was the kernel of truth to the story for me, because she couldn't relate it or steal it or borrow it from somebody else. And that for me, from the outside looking in, that's what changed my mind on the case.
Well, it did good service then. but the way I look at it, I have to think, Barney and Betty Hill were abductees. They were abducted. They've probably been abducted 1 million times in their life. Betty indicated that other experiences had happened to her rather. And but this was the first case in the United States, and people did not know how to ask questions. They did not know how to follow her story when what's his name, Benjamin Simon, the hypnotist that did hypnosis with her, he couldn't figure out what to ask her.
Yeah,
he didn't know, right. It was just all coming right out of her mind, and there was no way to give her clues to be straight and narrow and avoid confabulation.
Do you believe their story?
Oh, absolutely. It's just aspects of it I think are wrong. I think that there's aspects of it that are confabulated, but this is typical abduction stuff for the most part.
Right. And the other thing, we're going to be up against a break here, so I'll make this quick. This is the third part of the story that freaks me out. They were an interracial couple in 1961, and the last thing, and that dark period of the United States history, the last thing you want to do is be a visible black and white couple causing trouble, right?
That is exactly correct.
Yes.
Now, they weren't from the South. They were in New Hampshire.
It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You could be from Iceland.
Right, but he was a prominent figure in the community as well. But still, you are absolutely right. This is not the kind of couple who tries to attract lunatic fringe attention to themselves.
No, you don't need that. And so that when you add, for me, those three aspects to the story, and you take it as a whole, then I go back and then I start to look at the details because I believe the story.
Right. When I came to Temple University, I came at exactly the wrong time. I came in 1975, and Barney Hill's son had graduated from Temple in 1974.
Right.
Just missed him. Betty came into town, and we had her over for dinner, and she took me the next day to West Philadelphia, and we met Barney's sister there, who she was in contact with. They were a very nice family and all that. And Betty was a straight shooter. She was not trying to pull the wool over people's eyes or concoct some story for people to laugh at or anything like that. This was she remembered what she remembered. But I know the problems of memory for abductees, and it doesn't matter whether they got PhDs or they dropped out of school at the age of 6. It doesn't matter. There's still a certain amount of confabulation, and you have to be very, very careful with how people remember things and all that. But once you get the knack of it, it only took me about 20 years to get the knack, but once you get the knack of it, you can recognize it fairly quickly and ask questions that lead away from it and all that sort of stuff.
We'll talk about all of that next. Our guest tonight, Dr. David Jacobs. His new book is Walking Among Us. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. More with David Jacobs right after this break. Stay right there.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Not being able to fall asleep is so frustrating.
The tossing, the turning, the adjustment of pillows and blankets. Eventually you just decide to get up and start your day really early. It doesn't have to be this way though. Power Sleep is an all-natural non-prescription formula that will help you sleep like a baby. It contains neurotransmitter nutrients that promote the production of serotonin, which is responsible for feelings of well-being. Power Sleep is easy to digest and absorb and is made in a base of active probiotics. Don't miss another night of sleep. Order your Power Sleep at energywave.com or call 800-TURTLE-5. Add Power Vites to your cart while you're browsing. Perfect for Monday mornings. They're a complete multivitamin and mineral formula that will give you the energy you need to get through your day. Nourish your immune system and feel great. Get all the info and place your order at energywave.com. Enter code word SLEEP to get free shipping. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Did you ever turn to your radio for your favorite talk show to find that it's been preempted for this?
In the air to deep right center. Back goes Lewis to the wall, and it's out of here!
Or this?
And I'm ashamed of you, Hillary, for voting for it.
Do you have a favorite talk radio program that's not available in your city? Just go to TalkStreamLive.com for links to the best streaming talk radio shows. At TalkStream Live, you will find live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All your favorites are here. With such a large selection, you will also discover some new favorites. On the go and still want to listen? With a mobile smartphone, simply type TalkStream Live on your internet browser. Now you can take internet radio with you. You will also find hundreds of music, news, and sports streams. Best of all, the TalkStream Live directory is free and there's never a login required. Remember TalkStreamLive.com, the fastest route between you and your favorite talk radio show.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back to Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, David Jacobs. And his new book is Walking Among Us, and we're actually going to get to that in a second. And we kind of, what I like to do here, and this is the beauty of late night, overnight talk radio, is to paint the picture and go on a journey. And we are doing just that tonight with, I almost want to call you Dr. Jacobs. PhD intimidates the crap out of me, David. It just does. And so we're painting that picture. And talking about the Betty and Barney Hill case, which I think is not only a seminal case, but and an important one, but it's always, to me, David, the attention is in the details. And they have that in spades. And then I want to move forward a little bit in the timeline and talk a little bit about Travis Walton, because we have another case here where the attention is in the details, and it is there. And what do you think about the Travis Walton case, and how does that make you feel in comparing his case to not only Betty and Barney Hill, but other abduction cases that came later?
Yeah, well, I've known Travis for many, many years. He is an absolutely straight shooter. He's extremely intelligent. I believe he graduated from Arizona State as a philosophy major. And he's a really, really nice guy, a good person all the way around.
No question.
He was abducted for 5 days. There was a movie made about it that had almost nothing of reality in it in terms of what actually happened to him. But the problem is that he only remembered about 20 minutes of a 5-day event, and did not, as far as I know, do hypnosis to find out anything else. I examined the 5-day, 4.5-day event, or whatever it was, some years back, and I have 8 3-hour tapes. In those days, we used tape recorders. I have 24 hours of testimony, essentially, about what happened to this woman during those 5 days. So that's a big difference than 20 minutes.
Right.
And so we really don't know what happened to him other than he was abducted. He was in a room, he was on a table, and he went into another room with a weird chair in it, and he sat in it and played with it a little bit, and then he was escorted out, and something was placed over his face, and he sort of woke up on Earth again, in the town he lived in, and so we don't have a lot of information about it, and Travis does not want to look into it anymore, and but as far as I'm concerned, that happens every once in a while. Somebody will be abducted for 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, and I've looked at a couple of cases like that. Most of the time, the person is, in the 5-day case that I looked at, the people had just moved to a new state. They did not know anybody in the area where they rented this house, and neither of them had a job or friends in the area. So nobody missed them.
How would E.T. find that out? I have surmised that if I was, a little gray cruising around in a craft, right, and I'm flying across the United States, I'm not going to go to a city, right? I'm going to head out where I'm not going to be seen or discovered. If I was on another planet, I would do it this way, and find some lights in the middle of the woods and go there. It's the obvious thing. It's not something that I think is, when people try to debunk or be skeptical or discount these cases, they don't look at the obvious. That's exactly what you would do if you were on the hunt.
Well, let me put it this way. Being sort of on the hunt it's not quite a concept, because the abduction phenomenon is intergenerational. That is to say, if a person is an abductee, their mother or their father or both were abductees beforehand. And when people start to be abducted, they are usually in early childhood, if not infancy, and it continues with great rapidity, with great repetition, I should say, all the way until old age. It stops somewhere in old age. We don't exactly know when, but it would stop somewhere in old age. So people are abducted many, 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 many times, and I can't say many enough to say how many times they've been abducted. For example, if a person is 10 years old and he only has 5 abductions a year, which is I've never heard of. That's just it's not feasible. It's possible, but it's not feasible. I've never had anything like that in terms of people I've worked with more than once. But usually they're abducted many times during the course of the year. But if it's only 5 times and they're 40 years old and it started when they were 10, that's 30 years of abductions. And at 5 times 3 is 150. It's 150 abductions, I think.
Right.
And most people who know anything about the abduction phenomenon, who've been with me for a while, would give their right arm to be abducted only 150 times over a 35-year period or whatever it is, or 30-year period. And it's much, much, much more than that. It's many, many times more. So, what was the question again?
That's okay. That's okay. When we're talking about Travis Walton, let me back up though. There's one thing that happened between Travis and Betty and Barney Hill that I find interesting. They were both in cars and approached the flying saucer and stopped their cars, right, and got out.
Yeah, but that's typical. That's typical abduction stuff.
Right. And so does that, when you hear somebody recount an experience like that, as opposed to the alien abduction in the bedroom situation, which is my personal experience, by the way. And then you go to those that now they're not kids, they're adults. They're driving cars, right? They're adults, and pull over and see a craft and pull over to the side of the road. Then what happens after happens after. So which part of the abduction experience for you are you suggesting, and this is where I'm going, are you suggesting that they may have pulled over and experienced the craft, but they probably had an experience earlier in life too as well, many times, that they didn't know about?
Absolutely. Most abductees, I'm going to just throw out a number that has no meaning whatsoever, but let's just say 95% of abductees do not know that they're abductees, and they might have been abducted hundreds and hundreds of times and still not know that they are abductees. They've led odd lives. They realize that they're in one place in 1 minute, and then suddenly they're in another place, and it's 3 hours later, and they can't figure out how they got there or what happened, and they think, oh, well, I must have blacked out or something, or whatever. One woman, and I've told the story a couple of times, was in the middle of New York City in the daytime. She worked not on Fifth Avenue, 57th Street, I think. And she had an office and worked for a firm. And it was 12 o'clock, and she had planned out her lunch hour. Her lunch hour was she was going to go outside to a corner pizza place. She was going to get a slice of pizza, and then she was going to go over to Saks Fifth Avenue and shop for the rest of the hour. So she went over and she got the pizza, and she walked out with the pizza in her hand. The next thing she knew, it was 3 hours later, and she was inside a construction area, inside the fence. She was looking down at cranes and so forth in the bottom of this pit where they were building this building. She edged herself around and out through this opening in the fence and managed to get back to her office. Her boss said, "Where the hell have you been? Oh my God, we thought you'd been mugged or something. We're about to call the police. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon." She went directly into her office and she called her physician. She says, "I think that I've just had a stroke, or I have a brain tumor or something." And that is exactly the correct thing to do.
Wow.
She did the right thing. She went, she had tests run. There was nothing wrong with her brain whatsoever. And she had no idea what had happened to her. And
is there an age, David, where people start to recall and remember events from their childhood?
No. Most people don't remember events. They don't remember. The abduction phenomenon is clandestine. It is secret. And there's two aspects to that part, that clandestineness, if I may say. Number one, you have to keep it, first and foremost, you have to keep it secret from the abductee. And they're extremely good at that. Number two, they have to be invisible from time to time. In other words, in order to be secret, they can't just be flying around and zapping people out of their rooms with other people standing on the sidewalk watching. They can't do that. So you're looking at a very advanced technology compared to our technology. Our technology just began. If you say it began 200 years ago, which a lot of people say, historians say about 200 years is for advanced technology. That's nothing in terms of cosmic time. If you say it happened 5,000 years ago, that's also nothing in terms of cosmic time. It's nothing. It's no time at all. So if anybody's going to be slightly more advanced than us, even slightly, they might be hundreds of years more advanced. So we're looking at very advanced technology that allows them to do this in secrecy. Now, they are not perfect. They are living sentient beings, and therefore they have imperfections. And every once in a while, people who are standing on the outside will see somebody being abducted from inside their house. That happens from time to time. The Linda Corteil case that Bud Hopkins wrote about in a book called Witnessed, where people were on the Brooklyn Bridge who all the cars stopped as they watched Linda Cortiel flying out of her window with gray aliens and into a UFO. That happens every once in a while. They're not perfect. But at the same time, in keeping a secret from the abductees, they're really, really, really good at that. And so they lead these odd lives. Approaching people with the story you just told me, I remember thinking to myself, I've heard this story so many times. I became suspicious of it. And the story was a man and his wife and the kids are driving along in the dark of night, or the middle of the day, doesn't matter. They're driving along on a highway, and they look out the window, and there's a flying saucer on the left-hand side of the road, and they're approaching it and saying, "My God, look at that! That's astounding! That's amazing!" The thing flies over the road, and then hovers over a field near the where the cars are, but not that far enough away to be sort of amazing, and it's hovering there. And the guy says, the guy tells me he pulls over to get a better look at the object. Well, I heard that story about 10 million times. I pulled over to the side of the road to get a better look at the object. Well, why didn't he just go slowly and get a better look at the object? Just something was off. So I started looking into those cases, and in the ones that I looked into, the person, in fact, was driving along. They saw this object. They were all excited. It flew over to the side of the road. It was hovering there. And then the driver had the urge to just go over to the side of the road and wait. And he waited, and then these gray aliens came out, and they opened the car door, and he walked out with them. And he walked to underneath the UFO, and he went inside it that way. And then this happened, and that happened, and this happened, and that happened, and this happened, and that happened. And then he came back out, and he got back into the car, and then he looked over, and that thing just flew off at fantastic speed. So he put the two parts of the story together. They pulled over, and then they saw that thing fly. And he forgot what happened for the hour or an hour and a half, whatever it was in the middle. And that's typical of abduction events. And you have to remember that that abductees have these odd events happening to them. A lot of them think that it's just normal life, if you can imagine that. This is just the way everybody lives, with these odd disjunctures in time and space, with seeing weird things, with all sort, with lights coming in their bedroom at night and all that. And incidentally, the majority of abductions that I have looked at since 1986, when I began to do this work, are not happening when the person is asleep. I know there's a lot of debunkers out there who feel that this is sleep paralysis, this sort of ridiculous concept that is recycled every 10 or 15 years. And it's now back in vogue as sleep paralysis by people who have no idea what the background of the debate over this subject,
Right.
And but the majority of the abductees that I have worked with, the majority of their abductions take place when they are not asleep. That ends the sleep paralysis analysis. But the fact is, though, that there are three, and I talk about in the book, there are three pillars of the abduction phenomenon. Number one, it's secret. People do not remember, they should not remember, they're afraid to remember, or they don't even remember that they don't have to remember, they just plain don't remember. Number two, it's intergenerational. Their mother or their father was an abductee. If they have brothers or sisters, they're all abductees too. When they get married to a non-abductee, their kids will be abductees. Number three, it's global. This is not an American phenomenon. This is a global phenomenon. It is happening in all continents. I cannot say in all countries because I don't know what's happening in North Korea. But it's happening all over the globe, I'll say that. I have personally worked with people from Africa, from from Asia, from Latin America, obviously from North America, and so forth and so on. It's just everywhere. In other words, this is a program we're looking at, and this program has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it's goal-directed. There's a reason why this is going on, and it's been going on for quite a long time, maybe even for the most part of the 20th century. At least to the 1920s, or when Guy, when Bob Hopkins did a session with a guy in the 1920s, and this is a situation where time is not of the essence. They have all the time in the world that they need, and it's goal directed. They're doing this for a reason. So it's not just what I thought it was when I wrote Secret Life. It was they were examining us. They were looking us over. They wanted to see what made us tick. And that's why they were grabbing people at random, maybe, and all that. And it turns out that was simply wrong. When I wrote The Threat, I realized that was not a looking at us and seeing what makes us tick type program, that it was much more serious than I ever imagined. These were people who were not just using Earth as a way station to stop here and look at the flora and fauna and all that. It was very, very different than I had imagined. And now that I've written Walking Among Us, it's I think I've gotten to I can guess what the prospects are, but I don't have any way of knowing for sure even yet.
Well, we're going to talk about Walking Among Us after the break, because definitely there's been a shift, not only in the way that you present it, but also with the contactees that I've interviewed myself too. There's been a change. Now let's back up and talk about the changes that have happened. Were there the amount of abduction cases that are happening today are extraordinary. Was this going on in the 1800s, the 1700s?
I don't think so. Yeah. I think that if it was going on in the 1700s or the 1600s or whatever, I think that we would be now inundated with abductees. I think that the abductee population would be enormous. It's still enormous because of the growth of the population of the Earth, but we have not. The majority of people are not abductees, and I think if it happened hundreds of years ago, that might have been the case. Now, having said that, my guess also is that population up until the 20th century was not static, but it grew slower than it's growing since I was born.
Well, it's certainly gone backwards a couple of times too, as well. You know, the bubonic plague and the flu epidemic. You know, we went backwards a couple of times in recent history. Right,
but from the time I was born until now, there were 2.3 million people billion people on Earth in 1942, and in 2016 there's 7.4 billion. That is at a population explosion of enormous consequence, even with the two world wars. It's enormous. It's a humongous population explosion. Now, if the abduction phenomenon was already going on prior to my birth, then that meant that abductees were going at a tremendous rate. But now that the population has exploded, I think that the abductee population keeps up with the rate of population growth.
Now, let's go to the 60s and 70s and look at the type of abductions that were going on then. They were different than what's going on today. So what was the intention of the abduction on the ET side in the 60s and 70s? Why were they doing it?
Well, why questions are always a tough one.
Yeah. And you understand exactly where I'm going with this, too, as well. They were they were doing something.
Right.
So what was it that is different than today? What were they focusing on early on in the 60s, 70s, and the 80s?
Well, you know, the odd thing is that the procedures that they did on people in the 60s, 70s, and 80s are pretty much the same procedures they do now, except that in the 60s and 70s and around that time, what we saw primarily was gray aliens. There were some hybrids around. There have been hybrids around since Antonio Villas-Boas, the female that he is dealing with. So they've been making hybrids for a long time, creating them by taking sperm and eggs and then in some way joining those two together and adding alien DNA, if there is such a thing as alien DNA. They're adding something, they're changing something to the zygote, whatever it is, and implanting it back into the woman and then removing it at around 10 or 11 weeks of pregnancy. And that still goes on. It's been going on since forever probably, but it still goes on, only there's a much greater number of them now. And but what we've seen, the major change that I have seen since this time has been the growth of hybrids, because what I began to notice even with the threat and afterwards was more and more hybrids were doing abduction activity. I would see hybrids in the rooms with people laying on tables and that sort of stuff, and I didn't see that before. Then I would see hybrids performing procedures on people, which I hadn't seen before. Then I saw hybrids coming down and getting people and bringing them up, and there'd be mainly hybrids with just some gray aliens around, doing all the procedures on all the abductees in a room, let's just say, that has 50 tables in it. Then I began to see abductions where they were only hybrids and there was no gray aliens in sight. And that I was looking at change over time. That's what historians look for to a large extent, change over time. And that was, in fact, change over time, because people who were telling me that did not know anything about the history of the controversy of abductions. You know what I mean? They didn't know anything about what other people had said and all that. They're just telling me what happened to them. And there was that change. However, the major change that I discovered was in 2003. Now, I discovered it not at its first, but I found it out in 2003. But I could actually go back to cases in the past and see the same thing. And that was abductees dealing with hybrids who look really, really human, who are human for all intents and purposes, who they're teaching to live here, essentially. And they have long conversations with these hybrids in terms of what sex is, what love is, what your sister is, and things like that, and how to get along on Earth, how to talk, what this means, what that means, how do you hold a fork, that was starting in 2003. And one person told me that. He said he had a friend. I've told this story before. I think it was our fourth session, and he came over and he remembered that he had a friend, and the friend was not just a friend; it was his best friend, and he called him Eric. And Eric was. He'd gone to dinner with Eric many times. He'd been in other countries with Eric. He had been on fishing trips with Eric. He'd been here with Eric, there. But he'd totally forgotten him until he was in my room remembering that he didn't know Eric's last name, didn't know where he came from, didn't know where he was married, didn't know what job he had, but he was his best friend. And we began to do sessions about Eric. And oddly, other people began to come forward and say that they had been teaching hybrids how to do this and how to do that and how to live on Earth and how to eat with a fork and all that sort of stuff. And then another one came forward and another one came forward and then another one came forward, and then Karen Morgan, who's been all three of my abduction books, came forward and began to tell me the same thing, not knowing that these other people were saying that to me. And that's what got me involved with Walking Among Us. That I realized this might be what they talked about in the threat, the change.
Yeah, let's stop right there and let's take a break. We'll discuss Walking Among Us right after the break. Our guest tonight, David Jacobs. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. More Dr. Jacobs right after this. Stay with us.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
KGRA Radio. Intelligent talk.
If your home has hard water and it's leaving white spots, then it's likely that limescale is clogging your pipes. Limescale can cost hundreds of dollars a year in wasted energy and early appliance breakdown. HydroCare systems available at Wave Home Solutions prevent and remove limescale with just a simple filter change every 3 years. There are no salts, chemicals, or magnetic coils. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, just go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
If you're a talk radio fan, AccessRadio.net lets you listen to the best talk shows anytime and from anywhere. Works on your mobile or landline phone, and there's no cost if you have unlimited minutes. No need to use your data. Find your favorite talk show listen lines and discover new ones. Now you can listen on your schedule. Go to AccessRadio.net. That's AccessRadio.net. Save your favorite listen lines today.
Hi, I'm Richard Dolan. When I'm not hosting my radio program, The Richard Dolan Show on KGRA, or writing new books on UFOs, I run a publishing company. I'm proud to say that Richard Dolan Press has published some of the most fascinating books available on UFOs and related subjects. They include Dr. Bruce Maccabee's classic analysis of the UFO cover-up, David Marler's breakthrough book on triangular UFOs, Dr. Richard Sauter's unique work on underground bases, and other classics by Grant Cameron, Chase Kletsky, and Dr. Bob Wood, not to mention intriguing works by Eve Lorgan and Laurie MacDonald that deal with truly bizarre phenomena. I'm proud to publish such high-quality and original works, and there are several amazing books about to be released over the next few months. Go to richarddolanpress.com to learn more.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of Fade to Black by just calling 605-562-4482. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Just call 605-562-4482. You can listen to me, Jimmy Church, on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Go Beckley Tappy.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why Fade to Black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back to Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, David Jacobs. His new book is Walking Among Us. And now, in 2003, before the break, David was telling us about something that made him open up his eyes. And it's an interesting way to look at this. We have been discussing the abduction phenomenon throughout history up to recent times. And now a little, I hate saying a paradigm shift, but there's a shift into what has been going on. I've interviewed and talked to so many contactees and abductees, David. I can't put a number on it, just like you can't. And one of the things that they talk about more and more and more and more is this hybrid situation. And it is something that is in front of us now that I think warrants some serious investigation. You have come up with your own moniker, Hubrids. And let's kind of start there. What is a hybrid?
Well, it's just a combination between the word human and hybrid to differentiate those beings, hybrids, who are totally human in every conceivable way except one. Their brains can control our brains. Their minds can control our minds. And we cannot control them. They can make us think, do, or see anything that they want. They can control us. We cannot control them. That's the only slight difference.
Do we know it if it's happening?
No.
Will we know a hybrid if we saw one?
No. They go for the average. This is a plan that has obviously been a long time in the making. Now, I can't absolutely assure you that that this has not already happened many, many, many years ago. But I can assure you that what I have learned in recent years, since 2003, suggests a major shift as opposed to a minor shift in what's going on. But hybrids are the ones who are moving in. They have hybrids attached to them. Security hybrids who make sure that they're safe at all times. There's a personal project hybrid who's attached to the abductee, who I talked about in the thread, who has stayed with the abductee from the time an abductee is a child, usually, or an early teenager, all the way until they're 40, 50, or whatever, how old they are. And that abductee then, on board the UFO, teaches young hybrid children what life on Earth is like. They have a question and answer period oftentimes with illustrations on the wall. There's and sometimes children will be brought down at age 10 or 11 or whatever to go through somebody's house to see what it looks like, to see what a kitchen is like and what a computer is and what a television is and all that. But when they move into their apartments in late adolescence, early adulthood, they have abductees around to help them get the furniture, help them adjust to human life, which means learning everything, absolutely everything that they have not been keyed in on, so to speak. And that's what a lot of hybrids do now. And there is a boatload, shall we say, of these hybrids who appear to be moving in. Now, there are some who are living independently in an apartment, and most of them, though, are living in these 2, 3s, and 4s in apartments, and they're here to live here. They're living here. Abductees are helping them, not at all times, but at most of the time when they first come down, they get jobs of some sort somewhere, usually non-paying jobs as just sort of learners, what's the word I'm looking for? When you have an intern, like interns, things like that.
A couple of years ago at the Experience or Speak conference on the East Coast, a family of hybrids showed up. I don't know if you heard about this, but one of the things that kind of freaked everybody out there was when they didn't know how to use money. They didn't know how to use money, and they had to be told how to pay for their tickets to come in. And they kind of freaked everybody out. And I think, I'm not sure if all of them, but certainly one or two, I think the dad had a slightly blue skin to them, too, as well. Any reports of anything like that?
Nope. It's a clandestine phenomenon. The beings who are controlling this phenomenon are the insect-like ones, I think. I think gray aliens are just workers. I think everybody is a worker in this. I think we're looking at a workforce. And the ones, though, who are living here should be protected. And to be protected, they have to blend in. Absolutely. They can't look odd. They can't look bluish. They can't look too tall. They can't look too short. They have to have the right haircut. Everything has to be absolutely normal.
What's the end game with this?
Well, you got to remember the 3 pillars. It's global, it's clandestine, and it's something else. It's intergenerational. And I think my best guess, after spending my entire adult life looking at UFOs and then abductions, my best guess is what I call in the book planetary acquisition. I do think that this is a global phenomenon. It's secretive because They don't want us to know what they're doing. That's an irrefutable argument if you believe in this stuff. It's an irrefutable argument because if they were just here to help us, then they want us to know what they were doing, and all that. But no. And it's not ethical non-interference as if there was an anthropology situation. They don't want us to know what they're doing. And what they're doing is they're creating Hubrids to live here, be here, and eventually, because they can control humans and we cannot control them, they will be a superior species, we will be an inferior species, and this is not good. I do think that, and because it's global and it's happening everywhere, it's even worse. And because it's spreading through the generations, it makes it spread out through the society, and it has all these elements to it that we've known about for years, and now we just sort of put it together, and it comes out to, in my opinion, planetary acquisition. Why is there planetary acquisition?
Right.
That we do not know. Don't know. The ones who do know it are the insect-like ones, what I call insectolins, a combination of insect and alien jammed together and with the E eliminated. The insectolins are don't say why, and they're the ones who know. The Hubrids do not know.
Any Hubrids in public office? Certainly Ted Cruz is a Hubrid. I mean, I can see that, and he still needs education, so I could see that part too as well. But any Hubrids?
Donald Trump eats his pizza with a fork, so there you go.
And he's from New York, so he gets a pass card. But any Hubrids in public office?
I don't think so. I think that they're just fine being interns, learning what a job is, learning, just how to drive, how to go shopping. When somebody speaks to you on the street and says, hey, how you doing? You can't just stand there and look at them. You have to say, fine, thanks, how you doing? Or something like that. You have to make small talk with strangers. This is not a concept to them. They have to learn all this. It takes a long time to learn it, and they have to learn the rules of watching television. And the rules there are no rules, which in a rural-directed society on board a UFO is impossible to imagine for a lot of them. And it's a whole different kind of lifestyle that they've led. You have to remember they don't know how old they are. They're not born. They're taken out of gestation tanks after the fetus is removed from the woman at 11 or 12 weeks. They're put into a gestation tank with nutrients, and they're removed. And then so if somebody says my birthday is August 24th, and I'm 23 years old. Well, they're making that up, or they really don't know how. They would never say anything like that because they don't know how old they are.
Right. And what about collusion with the military?
I don't see anything like that. Military schmilitary for them. This is advanced technology, and these beings are in the service of the Hubrids. These beings and the UFOs are here. If they're going for planetary acquisition, they have already made the determination that no matter what kind of weapons we have, it's not going to mean anything to them. They can become invisible at will. They're the UFOs. The actual abductees cannot. I'm sorry, not the abductees, but the Hubrids cannot. They cannot become invisible at will. But UFOs can. The technology is there. So they're not afraid of. I know that UFOs have hovered over air bases and atomic installations and this and that, and I know all that, and I know that they've hovered over shopping centers, and they've hovered over every other damn thing. You know what I mean? They're all over the place. It's a global phenomenon, and I have not been impressed yet with government officials knowing it. If they did know it, and they were hiding it, and they were conspiring to keep it from the public, I would be happy. I would dance with joy. It'd be the most wonderful thing I ever heard. Because at least they're looking at it, at least they're studying it. Okay, if they want to keep it from me, that's fine. I'll go along with that. That's okay. I'll be pissed, but that's okay.
Sure, me too. I'm right with you on that. And now, what about David? Are they coming from the same planet? I don't want to say the same star system. I'm talking about specifically. Is there one point source, or are there actual multiple races that would obviously be conspiring together?
Well, that's two different questions. Number one is, where are they from? The answer to that question is, well, it's twofold. The smart-ass answer is, I don't know where they're from and I don't care.
Right.
That's actually a really good answer because it doesn't matter where they're from. Who cares? I mean, only astronomers or cosmologists would have a passing interest in that. But the fact is, though, that it doesn't really matter. The only question that matters is, are they here or not? That's the key question. Now, the other part of that question is, what was it? Did you say different types or something?
Yeah,
like that?
are they coming from different star systems? And if that is the case, then are they working together?
Are they right? No, they're all coming from the same place. The ones, my sense is this: people see gray aliens. You know, and I've looked at those gray aliens for a long time now, and I can see how they have big eyes and no hair and thin bodies and they don't breathe. I can see how they have holes for ears. I can kind of see why they would have 2 holes for a nose. But I can't see why they have a mouth. That always bothered me. They don't eat. They get nutrition through skin absorption. They don't breathe. They don't talk. They don't have any teeth. They don't have a tongue. They don't, et cetera, et cetera. So why is there a slit for a mouth?
Well, we have a tailbone, and evolution. You know what I mean? Maybe at one point they did use their mouth.
Nah, I think that they are created that way. I think that there's human DNA in them in some way.
Interesting.
That's my best guess on that, because that mouth really shouldn't be there. It shouldn't even be a vestige of. And the reason I say that is because there has to be more gray aliens as the population increases. There has to be more UFOs as the population increases. There's many, many more abductees now than there ever has been in history because of the population increase. Therefore, they have to have a greater and larger workforce. We don't see gray aliens as little bitty babies growing up. We don't see them getting really, really old and gray, so to speak.
Right.
What we do is just see more and more of these gray aliens. Now, there's a lot of hybrids who are taking their place also, but at the same time, they have to have those gray aliens, and we have, consequently, they might be stamped out of a die for all we know.
So I'm also wondering: are we dealing with a benevolent or a malevolent situation? If it's world domination, that would certainly, a takeover. Then we're talking negative. I don't see the positive side of that.
I wish I could find the positive side. The only positive side I can be is just wishful fulfillment. That I hope that they'll help us in some way or whatever. But I just don't see that in the evidence. When I wrote the threat, the gray aliens were talking about a change. Soon there's going to be a change, they would tell abductees. The change is coming. Everybody's going to be happy. Everybody's going to know his place. And boy, the change is coming. It's going to be great. And I tried to get abductees to tell me what the change was. Nobody knew. I tried to tell them what the word soon meant. Nobody knew. And but I think that right now we're either in the path to the change or the change itself. I think that's what we're looking at now, because this is the greatest shift that we have seen in the abduction phenomenon in all the years that we've been looking at this. I mean, for years and years and years, we looked at gray aliens and a hybrid here, a hybrid there, and that would be it. But now there's this shift. Now, it could be we're seeing the shift because we've discovered the shift, and it's been going on for a long period of time also. That's always possible. I don't know. But my sense is that the shift is relatively new, and that but you have to remember, Antonio Villas-Boas had this female who looked human to him, that he had to have intercourse with and all the rest of that stuff. That was in 1957, and she already looked human, as opposed to weird looking.
Yeah,
a human type, weird looking.
Some men will sleep with anything. I have a few friends. But what about being offensive or confrontational? I know that you had mentioned earlier that they could manipulate us and get us to do whatever they wanted. Is there a way to break that force and maybe crack one of them upside the head, or be negative, or fight them off?
I wish. There's a guy named Mike Menken who's got a website, and I think it's just michaelmenken.com. And what he does is he has these hats that he makes with a certain kind of inner lining that prevents their ability to control people's brains, abductees say.
I remember. Didn't one of the Fadernauts has to help me out with this? Didn't he give us some of those hats at Contacting the Desert last year? Somebody has to. I remember this. Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Well, I'm not sure. I don't know whether it works or not. I hope it does. But he's absolutely, definitely on the right track. The problem is that the scientific and academic communities look at this subject, and it is so disgustingly stupid to them, they can't even bring themselves to laugh. It's so ridiculous in the face of reality. Their concept of it being nonsensical is based on one thing that all scientists and all academics have in common, and that is total, absolute ignorance. They're not stupid, they're smart, but they're totally ignorant. That ignorance allows them to poo-poo this whole thing, to say it's ridiculous, it's nonsensical, there's no evidence, there's no this, there's no that. They just laugh it off because they're ignorant. They don't know any better. And there's no way of getting them smartened up. In fact, right now, in 2016, we have probably less academics and scientists who are interested in the subject of UFOs and abductions than ever before in UFO history. Every UFO society had all sorts of people on its in its magazines and so forth who were consultants who had lent their names to be used in public, to study UFOs and all that. And there aren't any more lists like that anymore. There aren't any more scientists who are really. There's a few. There's a few. I'm not going to say zero. There's a few, but the numbers of people who we used to have who had advanced degrees was very large. And in fact, I once counted up all these people. It was over 1,200 people who had post-BA degrees who had lent their names publicly to be used to study UFOs. That is no longer in operation.
Right.
It's awful. It's terrible. I tell people the number of scientists who walked across the street to come into my office in the history department and ask me what the hell I'm doing there. Why am I there? What's this class all about? What's UFOs all about? Why am I crazy? That sort of stuff. You got to remember, I had more publicity at Temple University than any other person outside of the sports program for years and years and years. And not a single scientist ever came forward on his own volition or her own volition, as the case may be, and asked me what the hell I was doing. What is this all about? Not one. It was just too stupid for them to even ask. You know what I mean? It was just, they knew it was all nonsense, and there was no reason to take that 1 minute trip across the street.
Do the Hubrids speak with an accent?
No, that would be standing out.
Right.
No, they don't speak with an accent. They speak a regular English. They might seem naive. That would be the one thing that they might see when they first get here, especially, they would be naive. But other than that naivete goes away fairly fast the more they learn from the abductees who they're working with. But otherwise, they're perfectly average. They're usually average in height also.
It sounds like you're talking. It sounds like you're talking about me. I'm starting to wonder about myself. I'm starting to freak myself out.
Well, if you can control other people and make them jump off a cliff, then you're onto something.
Well, I'm certainly naive, of average height, and I have no accent.
I used to be of average height, and now I'm less average.
Now, we didn't get a chance to address, and we're coming up to the end. Do you want to hang on for a few minutes after the break, and we'll hit a couple of more questions? Okay, let's do that, because what we didn't get to address is implants. And I kind of want to talk about this a little more in depth after the break.
There's no talking about them in depth. I know nothing about them, and neither does anybody.
Well, what about your I almost said patient, in your investigations, has it? Well, I know it's come up. What is it that you have learned?
Nothing. When it comes to technology like what the implants are, we know nothing at all about any of the technology that's been described over and over and over again ad infinitum.
Why is that? Well, why is that? I'm sure. Okay, out of your 1,200 cases that you've investigated, how many brought up implants?
Oh, a pile of them. Lots of them have brought up implants, that they think they have an implant in them, and this and that and all that. And especially putting an implant in, we know how it's done. We know what kind of instrument they use. We know as soon as somebody describes the instrument, I know what's going to happen. It's common stuff. It happens all the time. But what that implant does, the people who usually do this are gray aliens. They don't say. And most of the time, the abductee doesn't even think to ask. And so we don't know. We just don't know. And if they ask, there's no reason why the beings should tell them anything. They're oftentimes just silent when people will think enough to ask a question. They don't answer. When it comes to technology, it's astounding how little we know, and we should know more. But the only way we can know what extremely advanced technology does is through them telling us. There's no way to figure it out ourselves. Having said that, my guess is that the implants are extremely complicated, complex objects which provide a variety of different information for the gray aliens, so that they might keep medical records, for example. They might be locators, as people have always said, and they might do a bunch of other things as well. But they're obviously important for abductees to have them, but we don't know why. We do know that they're probably not locators, and the reason I say that is because people have had implants removed, and they could then be free to run away at their pleasure, and the aliens don't seem to think anything about it, and then the next day they'll be put back in.
Right. Let's take a break right there. This is Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, David Jacobs. We're talking abductions, the entire phenomena from day one to now. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, and we'll do about 10 minutes of overtime with David Jacobs. Stay right there. I'll be right back.
on jimmychurchradio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter. Angioprim can clean blocked arteries and improve blood flow in all parts of your body. Angioprim is liquid oral chelation. It's not new science. 50 years of research has gone into chelation, and now there's Angioprim. Easy, simple, liquid oral chelation. You take it with juice before breakfast and forget about it. Angioprim works fast, unlike old-fashioned chelation that takes hours. The first thing Angioprim users say is they have more energy, more strength, more endurance. Increased circulation and blood flow will make all your body parts work better. Log on now at angioprim.com to get more information on how you can get started and start feeling better and doing more. Lots more. Talk to a trained Angioprim consultant or go to angioprim.com for help. Call Angioprim toll-free at 877-882-7221. That's Angioprim at 877-882-7221. Get the facts about Angioprim. Begin living the life you want, doing the things you used to do again with Angioprim.
What's up, Fadernauts? Studio Dome loves Fade to Black and the F2B audience so much that they have put together the ultimate stereo Bluetooth system. They've done it just for you. Man, check this out. The Studio Dome SBB2 stereo system is here. It's featuring 2 Studio Boombox 2 SBB2 wireless Bluetooth speakers, packed in its own custom hardshell case. This Studio Dome system features the very latest in stereo Bluetooth technology. The 2 full-range boomboxes are in true wireless stereo. You've got to hear this. It's amazing. It's just $129, and use the promo code JCRTWS, and you'll also get free shipping. It's simple. Just go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on the Studio Dome banner. Go Beckley Teppy.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Welcome back to Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, David Jacobs. His new book, Walking Among Us. His website is UFOabduction.com. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. This is Fade to Black. Now, David, right before the break, we were talking about implants, and this is the one issue that I have with implants, is we have yet to have one analyzed with the right photography, the right electron microscope, showing something definitive. I have not seen that yet. Why is that?
Well, Dr. Roger Lear was working on that and was quite successful at getting a whole array of different items out of people's bodies. Whether they had been put there by aliens or not, we're not sure, but at least in a couple of them, they showed aspects to them that were unusual. They moved around if you put a metal near them, and they did this and they did that and some other stuff. He died before they were able to make a complete analysis of him, with him sort of leading the pack, and so I don't know what's happened to them. But the problem is this: if you're dealing with an extremely advanced technology and you get a hold of an implant, how do you make it work? How do you tap into it? How do you do that? In other words, it might be so advanced that there's too many levels of knowledge that you have not yet had, which would allow you to then understand the workings of whatever this implant is.
Sure, I accept that, and I have a total open mind when it comes to this. I'm just waiting for that one definitive thing where I step back and go, okay, holy crap, now we have something to consider here, and I just haven't seen it yet.
Well, in terms of implants, that's true, and people have had, the standard place to place them is through the nasal cavity and up to the cartilage and into the brain somewhere or near the pituitary gland or whatever. The second major area is through the eardrum and then near the brain. And then the third one is through a tear duct into one of the cavities there.
Yeah, all frightening. It all scares me. But I'm just waiting for that one shot where I just go, okay, all right, okay. Now we have something here, and we just haven't gotten it yet. I'm waiting for it. I have a question from Renee, one of our producers here. She says, if you could guesstimate for us, of all of the abductees and experiencers you've interviewed in the past year, approximately what % of them would you say had full conscious recall of their experiences? And would you say that the amount has increased over what it has been in past years or decades?
Right. Okay. Rather than just doing it the past year, let's just do it through my entire career as a researcher in this area. Nobody remembers fully remembers the entirety of an abduction event. They're not supposed to. So people will remember at times very large swaths of it. But they don't remember certain other aspects, and that happens very rarely. Now, when I say remember, I mean remember accurately, because a lot of people remember events that are very, very different than what actually happened to them, and they swear to me that this actually did happen to them. And I will say, okay, no, that's very interesting. Let's take a look at this. And when I start asking them questions, which are just logical and chronological, from the time they first notice something is going on, that they're about to be abducted, till the time that they get back, they realize right away that what they had remembered for years and years and years wasn't actually accurate. It wasn't really, it was truthful as best as they could do it. But they forgot this, they forgot that, they twisted this, they brought in something from a dream that happened sometime before, and they threw that in there, and they made it into this sort of whole testimony. And I learned never to trust consciously remembered events. That's where confabulation takes place the most, by far the most. And you'd think it would be just the opposite. You'd think, well, if people remember consciously, then it's got to be accurate. But it's actually less accurate than with simple questioning of logical and chronological questioning.
What about blue orbs? And let me clarify. Any abductees that have described a blue orb that either carried an ET or transformed into ET, whether it is a hybrid, a humanoid or a gray. Any descriptions like that? When I get a description like that, at times it's rare, I must say, but when I do get a description like that, and if we look at it, it turns out not to be exactly that way. Do people see orbs? Yes, I think that they do. What the orbs are for, however, is I don't really know. They might be, I can't even guess what they're for, because these beings are so advanced technologically, they can pretty much see anything they want to see and do anything they want to do. So I don't know what effect the orbs would have. But basically, though, it's not that common. I know people talk about it, but with the abductees I looked at, they don't describe it that much. There's other things that they're looking at. They'll see a light in the room, and then they'll just say, well, there are these beings standing in the room. How they got through into the room, they don't know, but this light is coming in through the window, for example, and they take the abductee out, and there's no orbs or anything like that. They go right through the closed window and into the UFO. Well, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I want to stay on this for a second. With the colors, when the light happens, is there a common color, red, blue, yellow, with the lights?
Most of the time, in order to get out of a person's room or their car, even if they're going to take them through the window, in order to do that, the light is usually a bluish color.
Yeah. I hear the same thing over and over and over again. I don't hear descriptions of other colors, and I find that very interesting. Do you have any idea why that would be?
No, but here's the situation. When people are abducted, they're taken right through the window. If they're at home, they're taken through the door. They don't have to open the door. They're taken right through the wall, or whatever. But they can only do that with that blue light.
Right.
You're looking at technology. They can't do it just because the aliens want to do it. They have to have that light. In other words, when you look on board a UFO and there are these circular doorways and all that, you don't see any aliens walking through walls. In other words, they can only do it with the help of that technology. So what that technology is, I have no idea, but it works really well in specific situations.
Do you have any updates, by the way, on Eric? Do you have further contact?
No, I haven't had contact with Bernard for years now, and I've tried to get in contact with him, and he just sort of stopped seeing me, and that was it, and stopped talking to me, and I don't know why. It's unfortunate because I worked with him. I think I had about 17 sessions with him, or something like that. And but I think he might just have gotten his fill of the whole thing and wanted to go on and lead his life, which most people realize that they now need to get their lives in order. They now know what's going on with them finally, and now they can push it off to the side, even though they know they're going to be abducted over and over and over and over again. It doesn't matter. They want to lead the life that they were supposed to lead, and they go ahead and do it free from worrying about this and fixating on it and losing sleep over it every night and all that. And so this happens from time to time.
Kyle Odom just recently was arrested at the White House, throwing USB drives and other stuff over the White House fence. He was arrested, and he was had just shot his pastor back in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And his manifesto that he had released just prior to this was about an alien Martian infestation, and that Obama was involved. And this was a guy that was in postgraduate school in medicine, very educated, very articulate, very well-written manifesto, if you haven't read it. What do you think about the Kyle Odom case?
Well, gosh, I don't know anything about it, but I do know that people will develop very serious mental illnesses, and it goes with the territory of being human, and you get to be paranoid, schizophrenic, or bipolar, or whatever, and or manic depressive, as they now call it, and or is it bipolar, as they now call it, and it's you can have fantasies like that all the time, and it's unfortunate, but it does happen. I really don't think it has anything to do with the abduction phenomenon, but the question is, who isn't abducted? If people who cannot see reality correctly, are they abducted? I don't know. I try not to see anybody who is on serious medication for mental disorders or have been hospitalized for mental disorder, because I'm just not equipped to handle any situation like that. I'm just an amateur,
Yeah, well, right. What's fascinating about it's funny that you say that in such a funny, smooth way, is Kyle Odom, in his manifesto, this is what's really strange about this, David, is he says that he lived a normal life, college, everything for him was normal until 2014. And that's when his contact started, and his life spiraled out of control. And he says, look, and when you read, this is the thing, everybody that I talk to about the manifesto and they read it, they immediately go, okay, well, obviously he was mental, schizophrenic, and he was in another world, but to him this was real. What's funny is when you read the manifesto, he wants everybody to understand that he's not crazy and that he lived a normal life until 2014, and this is what happened afterwards. And he's very detailed about it. He names names, places, people, and so forth. It's a fascinating study. If it is mental illness, and I can understand why I would think that, and so would others, it's detailed, and he lived that world, and it was real to him. I've never met somebody that has had schizophrenia, so I don't know. Maybe I'm schizophrenic. I don't know. And maybe I'm living in a world that I think is real and it's not. I don't know. But
the problem with schizophrenia is that the first thing it blows out your introspection. You can't say what's wrong with me. You lose that ability to do that. Everything becomes real, no matter what's going on in your mind, and you believe it absolutely. And that's why schizophrenia is so difficult a sickness to have.
Thank you for coming on tonight. Now, what's in your future? You're going to be at Contact in the Desert. What are you going to speak about this time around?
Oh, well, I'll probably talk about the same things we were talking about just now. And I'm doing a workshop, an intensive workshop on hybrids, I believe. I'm doing a workshop on what to believe in abduction accounts, a 2-hour workshop. The intensive one is 3 hours. I'm on a contactee panel. I don't know what that's going to be all about, but it's the first time I've ever been out there, and so at this conference, that is. And so it'll be new and exciting.
Well, you know, what's going to blow your mind about Contact in the Desert, and I'm going to say this in advance, so when I hang out with you there, I can say, aha, I told you so, right? So it is huge. It's not your conference with 250 people, right, or 300 people. Right. We're talking about thousands and thousands, and it's large, and it's there's 4, 5, 6 different large venues where people are speaking at, and it is a warm environment. You know, think Woodstock, right? Think that. But for ufology and the alternative, it is an incredible experience, and you're going to walk around there, and you're going to go, "Wow, okay, it's a really cool experience." And I'm going to say that now, so when you come up to me and go, "Church, you were right. This is amazing," you're going to experience it in a couple of months. It's a fascinating thing.
All right, that sounds great.
And drinks are on me. Okay,
that's a deal.
All right. David Jacobs, his website is ufoabduction.com. His new book is Walking Among Us. Thank you so much, David, and we'll see you in a couple of months. Oh, I forgot to announce our winner for a full weekend pass to Contact in the Desert is Kristen Lacey from Kirkland, Washington. Kristen Lacey from Kirkland, Washington. You are going to Contact in the Desert, and drinks are on David Jacobs, PhD. Thank you so much, David, and we'll see you in a couple of months.
Thanks, Jimmy. See you later.
Fantastic conversation. David Jacobs, his website is ufoabduction.com. The new book is Walking Among Us. Thank you so much. Fascinating conversation. And look, all of the calls that were coming in tonight, sometimes I just decide not to pick up. All right. Now, let me close out with a couple of things really quick. Some crazy news going on out there, and I'm not filling space. This is the nuttiest stuff you have ever heard. Utah made national headlines yesterday when the governor, Gary Herbert, signed a bill declaring pornography a public health crisis, making Utah the first state in the country to do so. Governor Herbert says it's backed by research. Yeah, probably his own research. But that is another story for another time. In front of a packed crowd in the Capitol's Gold Room, Herbert signed the resolution declaring pornography an epidemic. And I have to ask, how does he know? But don't worry, Utah. I know you're freaking out right now. Seriously, I get that. But the resolution has no enforcement power, and the governor made it clear that he is not banning pornography. Yeah, you go make sense out of that one. Utah. San Diego-based startup SkySafe has raised $3 million in seed funding to satisfy a need that may have been inconceivable a decade ago. Building technology to disable drones, any drone that may wander into spaces where they just aren't welcome, like over your house. Launched by a group of former MIT researchers, SkySafe uses radio frequency signals to wirelessly bring drones to the ground when they're flying in areas that they just shouldn't be. Founder and CEO Grant Jordan, who worked with drones in the U.S. Air Force after his time at MIT, says that SkySafe is meant to work with large clients like companies that want to protect their office parks, airports, or other places that have a no-fly zone. But I have to say, what about our house? Rita wants it. Shock Clock, an electronic shock wristband, listen carefully, is currently being funded on Indiegogo, and it slowly wakes wearers up by initially vibrating at a designated alarm time. And if that doesn't work, it beeps like a normal clock. And then, if you don't wake up and turn it off, it electrocutes you. Yeah, it zaps you. Continued use of the shock band will train your brain. Is this thing on? This thing right here, is it on? It's going to train your brain to know when to wake up naturally. Insert joke here, right? You know, got it. It's called the Pavlok, you know, like Pavlov's dogs. It also promises to complete your conversion from night owl to morning person. And friends, I'm not making this up. Google now is warning you to watch out for, well, Google. As of yesterday morning, the search giant's own safe browsing tool labels Google.com as dangerous. The tool, which automatically scans billions of URLs per day looking for unsafe websites, cites that Google.com is also potentially dangerous, and you need to look out for scary problems. And I'm quoting here. Some pages on this website install malware on visitors' computers. The safe browsing site status page warned, adding that attackers on this site may try to trick you to download software or steal your information. Yeah. 2 large shipping containers stamped with the words, and I'm quoting here, contains guided missile, end quote, were discovered in the Pacific Ocean near Alaska this past Sunday. Alaska state troopers said that the containers were empty. Yeah, and that information from tags attached to the boxes were sent to the U.S. military. There has been no immediate public comment as of now from military officials. Troopers were investigating the discovery of one of the suspicious boxes when they got a radio message from another mariner that a second container had been found. Both were found near the southeast island community of Craig. Now listen to me. 2 guided missile boxes were found floating and empty. Is that about the craziest thing you've ever heard? Well, you heard it here first. U.S. senators accused the Internal Revenue Service of failing to protect Americans' private data during a hearing in which the head of the IRS revealed that over 1 million malicious attempts at hacking take place every single day on the agency's computers. Despite mounting criticism, IRS Commissioner John Koskinen told the Senate Finance Committee that his agency has made, and I'm quoting here, steady progress in dealing with fraudulent refund claims. However, the IRS is now dealing with a much more serious problem, notably organized crime syndicates. For the fiscal year of 2016, which began October 1st, 2015, and ends September 30th, 2016, the IRS's funding was increased from $290 million to by $290 million to $11.2 billion. Why did they need the money? They needed the assets to fight cyber fraud and identity theft. 1 million hits a day, attacks on IRS computers. That is insane. The United States now is going to send 217 more troops, including Special Operations Forces, to Iraq. Now, this was released this past Monday. The troops will serve as advisors and trainers to Iraqis as they struggle to fight ISIS. Does this sound familiar? It sounds like Vietnam, doesn't it? This marks the first major increase in U.S. forces in nearly a year and will bring the total number of U.S. troops in Iraq now to 4,087. The decision comes as the cash-strapped Iraqi forces are moving to retake the northern city of Mosul, which is seen as key, of course, to reclaiming all of the country's control. The Russian Navy, are you ready? Are you sitting down? The Russian Navy is about to have absolute, unstoppable hypersonic missiles by 2018. A hypersonic missile right now being developed by Russia is likely to go into serial production as early as the beginning of 2018, 4 years ahead of schedule. Testing of the Zircon missile, which can fly at speeds at over 6,000 kilometers per hour, has already begun. Microsoft Corporation said today, are you ready? It's going to stop production of the Xbox 360. Yeah, more than 80 million units of the console has been sold since its launch in 2005. Moment of silence, please. And do the math. 80 million units at a couple $100 each. That's a lot of dosh. An AI created by scientists at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology uses machine learning to detect suspicious activity. It's getting it right 85% of the time. The system uses an algorithm called AI2 that detects anomalies in conjunction with a human expert, because AI2 on its own can lead to false positives. The researchers processed 3 billion pieces of data, known as a log line, through the system over 3 months, with the sheer volume of information training the system to the point where it can predict malware and cyber attacks now 85% of the time. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Thank you, David Jacobs, PhD. Great conversation tonight. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Kamarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Paul, Mark D. Kovar, LJ3, Renee, Mark Dunbar, Jonas. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Viteau, and Mark D. Kovar. Fady by Dale. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. Syndication is KGRA The Planet. Thank you to everyone for just being the most amazing audience anywhere. This broadcast is only copyrighted 2016 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Email is jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. I want everybody to be safe. Go Beckley Teppy.